practitioners or many other things, because I work with a lot of students who don't feel like they belong, who don't feel like they fit in science classes, in science in general, who have never been really given the chance that they deserve. But they are the most amazing people in the universe, and they're extremely hardworking. If I had to work as hard as any of them work, I never would have gotten any degree. We're a couple miles away from Stanford University. I put any one of my students against a Stanford student any day of the week. They're amazing people, but they don't have the opportunity that the Stanford students have, and that's ridiculous and it's unfair and it's not right. And so I feel very passionately about trying to make sure that they have some of those opportunities as much as we can give them in my environment. Let's see, in terms of how I got to this route, like you heard, I was a music major, but I also have a Bachelor of Sciences in marine biology, so I was also a biology major. My graduate work was in fish biology, and so I also did not do biology education research as a grad student. But as a grad student, I was part of what's called an NSF K-12 fellowship program, which doesn't exist anymore, but it partnered graduate students in the K-12 environment with public school teachers to do sort of co-teaching and co-planning there. And it also required me to take seminars in science education and evidence-based teaching while I was a graduate student. And that's where the light bulb really went off for me, this idea of the classroom as an evidence collection venue that I'd never heard of before, never thought of, and it was revolutionary to me. It was just an amazing thing for me to hear about that. And so that really launched me into the work that I do now. And so I publish at least 3 to 5 articles a year in places like CBA Life Sciences Education as a community college professor, and I serve on the editorial board, as I said. I also have 2 grants going on right now. I have an NSF grant that's working on this. I see a water bottle back there from Meredith, who's part of our group. CC Bio Insights, we're trying to make sure that biology education research is more representative of the true higher education landscape, because we know that about half of all biology students go to community college, but about, depending on whose study you believe, Brian's or whose count, it's 1% or 3% of biology education research is done at community colleges. So as we're doing, as I think is a good thing, more and more policy decisions are being made based on biology education research, which is wonderful. We realize that research is not necessarily representative of about half of the students out there, which is hugely problematic if we're making recommendations about the types of strategies we should be using, the types of interventions we should be applying, when half these students are currently in community colleges, which is a very different environment, and those strategies may or may not be best ones there. And there may be fabulous interventions in community college that are not getting looked at. So one of my grants is an NSF grant to try to work on that. And the other is an NIH grant called the Scientist Spotlights Initiative, which is aimed at sort of developing, disseminating, and assessing inclusive curricula for biology classes. So.
Awesome. Oops. Here, we will leave this down here. It's here. So, hi everybody. I'm Holly Menninger. I'm the Director of Public Engagement and Science Learning at the Bell Museum, which is Minnesota's state natural history museum and part of the University of Minnesota. If you have a moment while you're in town, you should just hop on the campus connector and head on over to the St. Paul campus. And it's just a short walk to our museum. We just recently reopened in a new building on the St. Paul campus. We were previously located on Church Street. Our museum has fundamentally transformed. We went from a very sleepy, dark, dusty, old school natural history museum with rows of dioramas to a large, bright, open, well-lit, and interactive museum full of technology. And we actually moved some of those dioramas, which was a pretty huge effort. I've been with the Bell Museum for about a year and a half. Prior to that, I was at North Carolina State University, where I was the Director of Public Science for the College of Sciences. And I should see what my job is at the museum, though, what my job means. I forgot that part. So I oversee all of our interpretive efforts that are like the public-facing interactive pieces of the museum. So that includes the planetarium, exhibits, and education and public programs. It was a new position at the Bell Museum to kind of create some continuity and flow between these areas that have traditionally been siloed, to make sure that we are connecting things thematically and in terms of best practices and approach. When I was the Director of Public Science at the College of Sciences, my role was to really work with faculty, students, grad students, postdocs, anybody kind of connected to the research enterprise, and help them better connect their research to public audiences, and to make sure they were successful when they did it. So I worked to develop a lot of partnerships with organizations in our community, whether that was the State Natural History Museum in North Carolina or the State Science Festival, various other storytelling opportunities, things, any place that I could get a scientist connected and interacting with the public. But then I also taught science communication workshops and how to do sort of public engagement in the best way. And I worked with faculty a lot on helping them write broader impacts parts of their grants and helping them think creatively and innovatively about public engagement. How I got to those places was a very zigzaggy route. So my graduate degree is in a subject or a field that no longer exists at the University of Maryland. It was BEs, Behavior, Ecology, Evolution, and Systematics, got absorbed into some larger program now. And my dissertation research was in ecology and entomology. I was interested in energy flows across habitat boundaries, particularly in ecosystems, stream ecosystems that were affected by humans, so agricultural streams, urban streams. I went to grad school thinking I was going to be a professor at a small liberal arts college like I went to as an undergrad. And then, a series of very challenging field seasons and very challenging sort of teaching experiences made me question why I was there. I talk about my quarter life crisis a lot. And something crazy happened when I was in the midst of grad school. The 17-year cicadas emerged in the Washington, D.C. area. And for an entomologist, it's like Christmas. And so I was part of a group of grad students and faculty that saw this as an opportunity to really engage the public. And so we did a ton of preparation, learning how to talk to the media and how to give presentations from garden clubs to second graders to really boost our understanding and knowledge of cicadas. I actually did a research project on the side as a result of that became the coolest part of my dissertation. But when they did emerge, are you familiar with what they do? They have like these giant red-eyed bugs that all come out at the same time within a couple weeks. When it happens in the nation's capital, it's a big deal. And so we were there was a month of mayhem, which included a lot of media interviews and a lot of opportunities to connect with audiences, and I loved it. And really thought about, okay, how can I spend the rest of my career or shift directions? What else can I do with a degree in science so that I can be in that place where I'm translating science, where I'm communicating science, making it more accessible to people? So after grad school, I worked in science policy a bit. I can talk about that later. Then I went up to Cornell and worked in natural resources extension, applying all those skills I had gathered along the way, being able to connect to the public, being able to translate science from researchers and make it accessible to policymakers. While at Ithaca, New York, there's not a lot around there, so I hosted a radio show on the side, and then had the opportunity to go to NC State, where before becoming the director of public science for the college, I led a citizen science and outreach program related to that. So I picked up all these different pieces. I've worked with museum partners. I've had a long fondness for museums. That's kind of where I got my start in science outreach in the first place as a high school student at the Cincinnati Museum of Natural History. And so it's been a real joy to be back in that museum space and getting to work with the public. And we might lead a team in doing that. And I'm happy we'll tackle lots more over the course of the morning. Your turn.
Hi everybody, my name is Margie Schmiel and I'm at the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. We're about 2 miles outside of DC in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Howard Hughes is a private philanthropy. We have the second largest endowment in the United States, right behind Gates Foundation, and we primarily fund biomedical research. We also have programs in science education, and so that's where I live. So my primary role there is that I work with the various program officers and program directors on basically designing evaluation plans and strategies. I'm also a team of 1 right now by choice. Because it keeps me flexible to work with a variety of different consultants and bring sort of external ideas and external people in constantly. One of the terms that I'm sort of more fond of than evaluation is effective philanthropy, because I really see my job as a way of collecting evidence and data for a lot of people that are scientists by training to help inform the work that they do and the way that they invest the money of the foundation. So in terms of kind of day-to-day work, I'll meet with various program officers who are trying to start new things. So for example, a couple years back, we had an initiative to think about whether there's better content media that we can be developing for community college professors that teach anatomy and physiology. So we conducted a variety of focus groups with community college professors around the country to get a sense of what their needs might be. In addition to the work that we do in formal education, we also have a division called Tangled Bank Studios, and that's essentially a film production side of what we do. And that works more directly with sort of informal audiences. So we fund and make programming that goes on Nova, Smithsonian Channel, National Geographic. We had a YouTube series. So a variety of different distributions for a whole range of science topics. And so for that, I do a lot of research primarily around audiences, audience reaction, public understanding of science, and youth engagement where appropriate. So for instance, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be going to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, to a film festival for 2 weeks because we are sponsoring 17 young science media makers from around the country, and they're engaging in sort of a week-long workshop to cultivate their skills in visual science storytelling. The position that I'm in is new. It had never existed. I got it in 2017. I left the Smithsonian Science Education Center where I was the director for curriculum and communication and interviewed for a totally different job than this one. And I didn't get that job, but they said, we like you and we noticed that you do evaluation and we think we need more of it, so can you come tell us what to do? So I've essentially been sort of inventing this whole thing kind of on the way. One of the new things that I'm doing for the Institute is thinking about inviting proposals from scholars that are doing sort of original scholarly research around some of our missions and priorities. And so for that, our Vice President of Science Education is a biologist named Sean Carroll. He has been an HHMI investigator throughout his entire career, and he's also been a storyteller throughout his entire career. So he's really passionate about the power that stories have just in our lives, and he's really passionate about telling science stories that kind of go above and beyond sort of what you might see on something like Planet Earth, and really look at the process of science and try to figure out a way to engage the public in looking at the process of science. And so to that end,